So hi everybody and welcome back to Hello, It's Better to Talk. Now we haven't been talking actually very much for the last 3 months or so. I think for me on a personal level, having another litter of golden cocker spaniel puppies was incredibly time consuming and drove me a little bit mad towards the end, to be honest. I mean, it was a wonderful thing to do. We've got 7 beautiful puppies out there in the world, 5 girls and 2 boys. But anyway, that was very time consuming. And then far more tragically and terribly what's happening out there with the war between Russia and Afghanistan, which I think has taken a toll on all of us in a sense of maybe believing that, you know, how can we possibly be living through a time of war? It's a sort of sense of denial for me, and then accepting it's happening, and also lots of other really tough stuff happening for people. Maybe what we need to come back to is the importance of talking and the importance of telling our stories. And on that note, I am thrilled to welcome, hi there, Catherine
Hello.
Simpson, who's the author. Her latest book is called One Body, and it's just out. I think probably less than a month, isn't it, Catherine?
It is just a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was dying to read it. Living to read it, maybe might be a better way of putting it, because Catherine and I have these kind of almost not parallel lives, but there are so many resonances. Catherine also wrote another book called When I Had a Little Sister, which was about her sister and her death by suicide, as indeed I wrote my memoir about my brother David and his death by suicide. And we've both had breast cancer. But I didn't know that you'd had breast cancer until I read your book. That was something that had completely passed me by. And I remember there was one part where you said in it that you'd been along to some literary festival and you wished you'd actually said, this is what I'm going through. Because this whole thing about owning our stories, owning what's happening to us. And Catherine gives a wonderful twist on this in that she's using her body as the story, as what's happened to her body. So anyway, I've rattled on a long time. So Catherine, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
You're really, really welcome. Lovely to have you on. So tell us a bit about when the germination of the idea about the book came.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after I wrote When I Had a Little Sister, I was waiting for publication of that book. And that was when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I immediately started trying to find books about breast cancer, because that's what you do. If, you know, when I want to find somebody else's experience written down. Yeah. So I searched and I did find some books about breast cancer, but I couldn't really find one that was what I was actually looking for. What I wanted was an honest account of going through the experience that wasn't sugar-coated in any way, because I found a lot of the accounts that I did find had been written some considerable time afterwards, by which time you've had time to put your brave face back on. Yeah. And so they were very brave. And I just wanted a more honest account of breast cancer. So because I couldn't find it, I decided that I would write it. So as I went along through the experience, I would write it down. Yeah. So I started to write it down, and it really helped, because when I was sitting in waiting rooms, and of which you do lots when you've got cancer, there's a lot of waiting in rooms, a lot of waiting for results, a lot of waiting. I found that something to keep me busy. So I always had my notebook and my pen with me, and I would be writing down the details of the waiting room and the other people in the waiting room and all the rest of it. So I've been writing this down for several months, and I realised that it was being really helpful. But I also realised that memories were being triggered in me of previous experiences in this same body, from childhood, right from puberty, things that were being triggered because of the experience of breast cancer. You know, I started to think about, for instance, you can't wear an underwired bra. Yeah. If you're getting surgery for breast cancer. So that reminded me of what it's like when you have to first wear a bra, and the whole experience of going through puberty, and all the many uncomfortable pieces of underwear that I've trussed myself up in throughout the years to try to be acceptable to some standard of womanhood. So that sort of brought a lot of memories like that. But every aspect of cancer seemed to bring different memories up. So I started to intersperse the notes about the cancer with stories about my body throughout the years, and things that have happened to me because I live in a woman's body. And then when I showed it to Sarah Band, who published it, Sarah there was really, really helpful. And she said, I think we'd like more of the memories about, growing up and growing older in your body to balance off the cancer story. So at her advice, I decided to alternate the chapters. So it's a chapter about going through the cancer experience and a chapter about living in this body. So it brings all kinds of things into it, puberty, breastfeeding, unwanted pregnancy, childbirth, early menopause, you name it. And if I've been through it, it's in that book, really. So that's how the book came about. And it's funny because the reaction I've had from people has been really, really heartwarming. A lot of people have been very moved by it, but some people are interested because it's about cancer, because they've been through it or they know somebody who has. But actually, most people are interested just because they're women or because they're married to a woman. So it's just about living in this woman's body throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, and that kind of era. A lot of people can identify with things in there.
Oh, hugely. I mean, there's so many things that you talked about that I was thinking, yes, because I mean that whole thing about an underwired bra, that you can't have an underwired bra after breast cancer. But me being me and being a rebel and also starting a new relationship, I wore an underwired bra, and then I found out why you shouldn't, because the wire actually dug into my new boob, which isn't a boob but is a boob. I've had a vasectomy and a reconstruction, and then caused a sore, and then that took weeks to heal.
Oh no.
So I'm very bad at taking advice, and so often push against it and going, are you sure? Are you sure I can't do that? But
oh no, I was so relieved to get rid of the underwire bras, and it made me realize that my daughters, I've got two daughters who are 23 and 26, that they wouldn't dream of wearing underwire bras because they're too uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I sort of thought, no, you're quite right. Why on earth have I been wearing these uncomfortable things where the wire escapes and starts poking through your jumper in Tesco and this sort of thing?
Yeah.
So I'm all about the comfort now.
Great. Which is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, there's a line in your book which says something like, everything bad that's ever happened to me has been because I'm a woman. I mean, it's something that I do. I should have got it. It was, and I thought, that really kind of clanged me, really rang bells for me. And I was thinking, is that true? And the only thing I can think of that I would have done if I'd have been a man was root canal treatment, which I absolutely hated. Root canal treatment was something that I would have had although maybe not, because actually I've had 3 children, a girl, a boy, and a girl. That each time I've had a child, each time I've got pregnant, I've had problems with a tooth. So
they did used to say that. Yeah, they did used to say that, a tooth for every child, didn't they?
Yeah. And some of these things are flipping true.
I mean, I know that men can also experience sexual abuse. Men can also experience, in fact, breast cancer. There are a few hundred cases a year of men having breast cancer, but overwhelmingly it's women who do get breast cancer. But it is possible for a man to have it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think this is particularly resonant, like our last program on Hello, It's Best to Talk was by Sylvia Tillman, and she was talking about how the body holds the score. And yet, we've been brought up in a generation, haven't we, Catherine, whereby, the skeletons that doctors studied were male skeletons, or the safety tests that have been done about protecting yourself in a car have been done on male dummies. And yet, here we are as females and human being needs women to have the babies, and
absolutely, yes. Absolutely,
and yet we're still being sidelined as if we're sort of like not a man, rather than
absolutely,
what we are.
Yeah, because there's this slight sense of shame around the woman's body. I feel that isn't around the male body. And this was really underlined to me when I was writing the book. I hadn't really thought thought about the sense of shame too much. But it came to me very strongly when I was writing the book that from puberty, I was surrounded, well, within me, I felt such a lot of shame and embarrassment and guilt for some reason. I'm not quite sure where that came from, but it all met up in me to create this huge self-consciousness. So I could barely look at people. You know, and I grew my fringe over my face, and I started to round my shoulders because I was embarrassed about having big breasts, you know, when I was 13. And that whole thing about having this woman's body, which is not something that as a young girl you're taught to be proud of.
No.
It's something that you seek to conceal, or, you know, you don't want anybody to mention it, or, you know, it's just periods, for instance. I mean, we just never ever talked about them. I had some good close female friends. Periods never mentioned.
Yeah.
Never discussed them with my parents. Nothing.
No.
And that just then leaves you with the feeling of embarrassment about what your own body's doing, when in fact it's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, it's doing a fantastic job. And yeah, we've each brought kids into the world. We've been lucky in that. But yeah, I mean, that whole thing, I mean, periods and pelvic floor. I didn't even know I had a pelvic floor. I didn't know pelvic floors existed until I was in my early 20s. Nobody had ever mentioned a pelvic floor.
No.
Even now I kind of have this image of it. It's something like a kind of like a floor. It's like not quite within me.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes, I know. I mean, as I mentioned in the book that I didn't know the difference between a uterus and a womb till I was pregnant. I mean, I didn't know that they were the same thing, rather, until I was pregnant. I had no idea. And I didn't know the difference between a vulva and a vagina, probably until about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So, you know, these things with really basic words for our bodies.
Yeah.
And we're just not used to using them.
No, and it's important that we do use the right words for them as well, right? You know, for ourselves and for the other generation. I've talked before with Emma Jane Taylor, and who talks a lot about child sex abuse, and she says it's really important to say what's happening and say different parts of your body rather than, you know, disguising it and pretending, pretending it's a pussy rather than a vagina. Although the vagina turns into a birth canal, doesn't it? That was the other thing that I found quite interesting. When you have a baby, it's not a vagina anymore. It's just it's purely there as a birth
root
canal.
out.
To get your babies out. Okay, so what is the reaction? So you mentioned you've got 2 daughters. What's the reaction been of your family, if I can ask you that?
Well, my parents are both dead, so I probably wouldn't have found it. I don't think I would have found it possible to write if my mother had been alive, because. But my mother's been dead now about 15 years, which is when I did start to write, actually, when my mother died, because my mother was very strong personality, and I don't think she would have approved of the lack of privacy that writing about your own body creates. Whereas I now feel I'm 58 and I'll talk about what I want. I'll describe what I want, and now that my parents are gone, the very last sort of reason not to talk about my body is gone. My father just died there in November. So my daughters are very, 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 very supportive of the writing. I mean, they love, you know, they are very open. We talk about all kinds of things. I'm sure they keep some things secret from me, because I'm sure that they do. But, you know, we are very open. And one thing that I do talk about in the book, which I'd never told them about, was an unwanted pregnancy I had as a teenager. And so I said to my husband, I'm going to write about it. And he said, well, that's fine, but I think you should tell the girls first. So I did. And they said, it's your story, you tell it.
Brilliant.
And they've been really, really supportive of it. And now my elder daughter, she's autistic, and she has various challenges in her life, and she's writing a blog about that. And I'm finding myself in her blog. Yeah, I'm finding myself in her blog. And so I'm getting the reverse thing of, you know, I'm not the writer, I'm being written about. And that's quite a dizzying experience when you're used to being the one with the pen, which is quite powerful, being the one with the pen. And I do appreciate that when in writing my own memoir, I am also including the story of other people, because it's inevitable that you do to some extent. So I'm very thankful that they are very, very supportive of me.
Yeah, that is wonderful, because I think there'll be many people who watch this program and maybe they're writing their own story. And it is a thing to think about, isn't it? About the people who are around you, how it might affect them. I mean, like you, again, Catherine, I didn't start writing until both of my parents had died, actually. So because it felt, I don't know, you know, that they both came in they were born in the silent generation, that generation sort of between about the mid-20s to mid-40s, who were brought up just to be quiet, and they tried to do that with us as well, I think to a great extent. But for me, you know, it's a search for when you're writing a memoir, it's about a search for a truth. You kind of keep uncovering more layers of that truth.
You don't really know what you're writing until you're finished, I think. You know, I mean, I when I had a little sister, I wanted to write a book to honour my sister, to honour the life of my sister, and I used her diaries as the basis for the book. But I'd written the first draft, and then a mentor said to me, yes, but we need to know about who's telling us the story. You know, you can't just tell us about your sister. We need to know who you are as well. So then I had to go back and inject myself into the book. And in doing so, I realized that I was actually writing a book about my mother. My mother is a really main character in that book, even though it's strictly speaking a book about my little sister, which it is. But my mother is a really strong character in that book. And it was only in writing it that I realized just how, I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't want to use the word oppressive, but just what a huge presence she'd been in my life. And so you don't really know what you're writing until you've finished it. And then you take a step back, give it a little while, and then go back to it, have a look, and then think, right, okay, so these are the patterns that are going through. These are the echoes. These are the themes that keep rising to the surface, and then you can go back and build on those and make more meaning out of them.
Absolutely. But going back to the first point you're making as well about you being the character in your memoir, I think like you, again, there's so many like yous I could be saying, but you know, I had to be told that I needed to step in to my memoir as a character. And it's weird to have that sense of, you know, you're you, but then you're also presenting a version of you in a book. And also as you're discovering what it is that you really want to write about. And that sometimes pops up. And for me, it would sometimes pop up, you know, like I'd be kind of tapping away there thinking, this is absolute crap. I don't know what I'm doing. It's so awful. You know, and I'd really be giving myself a hard time. And then something would come out. It seems to be those. Do you find that?
Absolutely, definitely, yeah. I think when I go to when I run a writing workshop, or when I'm at a writing workshop, if you're given about 10 minutes to write, so there's quite a bit of pressure on you to write some words. So you write right away. So you may end up with 2 pages of scrawl, and in that there may be 1 or 2 words that are absolutely yes. That's exactly what I was trying to say, or that's exactly the word I was looking for, or so. But you have to kind of just get the pen to the paper and write to allow these odd, useful sentences to come out. And, you know, if you just keep sitting there waiting for the right moment to write it or the right moment to start, it'll never come. You'll never write it. So just start, accept that a lot of what you write will be not very good. And that's what the whole editing process is about. And I think the editing process is probably the best fun, because I find writing first draft quite hard, because it is a bit like drawing teeth, and you do have to keep going even when you start to lose belief in what you're doing, and you start to think, oh my goodness, is this ever going to mean anything to anyone? You just have to keep going. It's quite a brave thing to write a first draft. But then once you've got that, I always think it's like you've gathered your clay and now you can make your pots with it. Yeah. So then you can go back and you can play around with your words. You can move bits around. You can add bits, take bits away. And that is really satisfying. It's a bit like weeding the garden. You know, once you've got the weeds out, you can see how fantastic the flowers are. So the editing I love.
Great. Well, I think it's a lovely point to stay on, because in a way, I want people who are watching this program also to be inspired by Catherine and her wonderful book. Again, I'll just do it. One Body, available from all good booksellers and Amazon and all the other things that we can get books from nowadays. And to start writing, because that's it, isn't it? So to just kind of get on there, pick up the pen, open the laptop and do it.
I do encourage people to do that, because I say that, people, when I first told people I was writing memoir, which is when I was writing when I had a little sister, and they would look at me a bit quizzically as if to say, why are you writing a memoir? You're not famous, you why? And so it was almost like you had to either be very, very old or very famous, or have done, be a sort of a public person to write a memoir. But I don't think that at all. I think we've all got a really good story to tell, because there's nobody else lived in our bodies, in our time, in our place. There's nobody else seen the world through our eyes as we have done. And once we're not here, those memories and stories have gone. As I know, it's always been underlined to me, like when my father died, and when elderly relatives die, you suddenly realise that all those stories have gone, all those memories have gone. And so I think it's a great thing to write down our stories, however ordinary they are, because actually nobody's story is ordinary. I've learned that through teaching memoir. Nobody's story is ordinary. But however ordinary you think it is, write it down, because in 20, 30, 40 years, the everyday details of today will not be everyday anymore. They will be extraordinary. So when we look back, or when people look back on our stories now, they'll be thinking, goodness me, did they really talk to each other through a Zoom or whatever? All these details that we've got, they won't be ordinary anymore. And, time moves on and things change. So that it's worth recording what our lives are like now. And your family will probably be very grateful anyway, because, so many times we don't ask our parents about things because we're so busy bringing our own children up and life gets in the way. And I wish my dad had written a memoir.
Yeah, he sounded like a wonderful man. But he lives. I mean, he lives on through you as well. I always have a sense of what your dad was like through your book, especially from when I had a little sister.
Well, I think I'll be writing about him again, actually, because I spent most of lockdown. All of lockdown, really. My father was getting very elderly by then. He was 94, 95, and he was getting Alzheimer's, and his health was really beginning to fail. And so me and my sister shared the care. So I did 2 weeks in Edinburgh looking after my daughter, who's autistic, and then 2 weeks in Lancashire looking after my father. And it was like that throughout the lockdown. So it was quite a strange time living in two places. When the world was just locked down, it was very strange. So I think I'll probably be writing about him again. I feel there's more to say about being a carer, really, about what it's like to be a daughter and then a carer, or a mother and then a carer. I think it's...
and your dad was also a carer for your sister at times.
He was.
That relationship between him and your sister felt to me very powerful. So I look forward to that. And so thank you, Catherine Simpson, on behalf of everybody, for recording your ordinary but really extraordinary life in your beautiful book. So strongly recommend it. And thanks so much for watching, everyone, and sending you love and light from Sussex today. Thank you.